Well, I think what put the capstone on was the last month of this presidential election. I think what happened was that Baron Trump got the ear of Trump and knew the podcast world, and Trump, being very entrepreneurial and a risk taker, decided to pay attention.
Yeah.
Because he picked a lot of podcasts that you'd only pick if you knew the podcast world. I think Rogan's an obvious choice because like he's the 800-pound gorilla, obviously, although I'm not saying it wasn't courageous and wise of Trump to go on Rogan. Because,
no, basically no other politician would ever do a 3-hour unedited, sit down like that.
And there's certainly this delusion that I think the legacy media and perhaps even the Democrats are starting to realize, perhaps, that their consistent insistence that Rogan is a fringe figure, and certainly like some kind of gateway to the right, is ignorant and preposterous, both of those things.
Yet bizarrely true now also, right? Right?
Like but the thing is...
It shouldn't be.
He's a gateway to... It's the very strange version of the right.
Well, that's what they used to say about me. Because I left the left, but wait a minute, this guy's gay, he's still liberal, mostly pro-choice, like we could do the whole laundry list of things, but that I was just willing to talk to people. So then suddenly I'm talking to you, and then I was like, I'll talk to Shapiro. I'll talk to Glenn Beck. That's a scary guy. He's a crazy right-winger. I'll talk to Larry Elder, et cetera, et cetera. So then that's what people used to say to me all the time. You're the gateway drug. The funny thing about Rogan is if you see what the media is doing with him now, is the mainstream media is going, why is it that we don't have our own Rogan? Well, you idiots, you had him.
Yeah, no.
You had him.
Well,
you refused to talk about it, and you tried to get him kicked off. You tried to get him kicked off Spotify.
Did you see Greg Hurwitz made public
I did
this
see
week? I thought that was really good. That message that because Greg was a very influential consultant to the Democrats and a messenger, very influential. And he sent them an invitation from all of us, essentially, back in 2017, saying, hey, the reason that none of you are on our shows is because you say no. It's not because you're not being invited. And I invited dozens of high-ranking Democrats to come on my podcast, and all of them said no. They would talk to me privately, but not publicly.
As recently as I believe it was last March when we were having the big bipartisan border deal fight. Remember that? There were 3 days of we're going to pass this bipartisan deal to deal with the border, even though we don't need a law passed. It's obviously the president is allowed to deal with the border. We went to D.C. We hunkered down in a studio for a day in Rumble Studios. We invited 20 Republicans and 20 Democrats. 19 Republicans said yes. The only one who couldn't do it that day was Rand Paul because one of his staffers got stabbed on the street of D.C. That tells you everything you need to know about that. 19 of 20 Democrats did not respond. The only one who responded was Ilhan Omar, which was kind of hilarious. And she said no. But that tells you it right there. I am not thought of as a gotcha interviewer, right? That was the biggest knock on me for years is, Ruben's just going to throw you softballs. I was just interested in talking to people. But the idea that
that's Rogan too. Rogan's probably a little harsher than you, but he's not a gotcha interviewer ever.
No, but if you have the entire cultural apparatus, which the Democrats in essence had, and then you just think you can ignore the thing, you'll ignore it until you can't ignore it anymore. I think what's now happened is they cannot ignore it anymore.
That is exactly what happened.
If I was getting the views or you were getting the views that MSNBC were getting, I would consider a new career. I actually mean that at this point. We're blowing them out of the water. And I'm not telling you it's because I'm the best journalist in the world. I don't even consider myself a journalist. I tell people what I think. I see the news in the morning, and then partly because of being on tour with you, I try to do in the hour-long show that I do every day, I try to tell a story. I don't just try to say, there's 10 things going on. I try to loop it into some sort of narrative story. And you've met my producer, Phoenix, who you hugely helped in his own life. And then we started working together, and now we craft a story so that if people give me an hour of their day, which is an awful lot of time, 5 days, and I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware of it. of that. And I don't expect everyone to do it. And maybe you can only give me 5 minutes one day and one day you'll give me an hour or whatever it might be. But I want you to walk away with, oh, there's some context to what's going on here. Not just, okay, this guy said this and this one did this and
right,
just the endless, because otherwise we'll do that forever, right? We'll just do it forever. And I think by all of us having these conversations, by starting to find these alliances, by the left being so hysterical, and you may remember we were in Miami a couple years ago at a party in a backyard, and there was a big debate about what do we do. It was a lot of your friends, a lot of our friends, and there was a big debate about what do we do with the Democrats. And I kept saying they are not coming around. They are not coming around. And Greg was taking the counter position. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here because I would like them to come around. I think maybe now. Right. So it's going to be years now because they have
an opportunity now.
But there's an opportunity at least. It was going to take the destruction, and I think we have the destruction now. I don't know how haywire it goes on their side, but I think that was it. The only thing the people on the right did that somehow now makes Joe Rogan a Trump supporter is that they were willing to talk. That's it. Willing to talk and willing to question things, and then it got put on steroids with COVID.
It's so funny watching the MSNBC people do a post-mortem on what's their claim? The right's stranglehold on the new media.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't really call it a stranglehold when the reason it exists is because you wouldn't participate.
Right.
Right. And so you refuse to admit to the reality of the new technology, and you refuse to engage despite repeated good faith offers, like endlessly repeated good faith offers with people. It certainly wasn't inevitable that Rogan was going to transform into a Trump supporter.